This is Dylan Moore with iRead TV. I've got a philosophical-ish concept that I wanted to see if I could explore and express today. It's something I've thought about for a while because it's a bit in contradiction to what you typically learn when you want to learn how to be somebody good. We're going to talk about some good and some evil here and some power. Because I want to kind of bridge this off or leap off from the idea of power being bad and power being the thing that corrupts, power being an addiction and power being something that people need to avoid. And I'm going to be loose with the definition of power through this. Because there's always this idea, I don't know if it's always this idea, but there's this prevailing idea that comes from, what's the guy's name, Lord Acton or something like that, that absolute power corrupts. Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And when you talk to people who want to be good, often the expression that you get in a conversation like that is, well, I don't want the power to corrupt me. Or I don't encourage anybody else to go forth and acquire power because I don't want to encourage people to go out and get power and therefore get corrupted, because power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I feel like this is wrong. I guess I'll just put it bluntly. I think it's wrong. It's not that there isn't an element of truth to it, but I think it misses the point, and it misses the point in such a way that leaves us very vulnerable, and vulnerable specifically to evil. What do I mean by that? So there's another adage that isn't as popular that I think should be, and this comes from Frank Herbert, who's the author of Dune. Died in 1986, so the year I was born, from the Seattle area. Haha. He died in 1986, which means he's a bit more contemporary than Lord Acton, or whatever his name was. And a theme that is, I don't know if it's prevailing in all of his books, but it's prevailing in most of his books, is that it's not that power corrupts, it's that power attracts the corruptible. Let me say that again. It's not that power corrupts. It's not like if you take any individual in there, regardless of their, affiliation on the Dungeons and Dragons evil and good spectrum, and if you throw power at them, they just automatically become more evil because they get corrupted. It's that powerful position is going to be attractive to a person who does get off on that drug of power, of being able to control other people. And I'm not just referring to political power here. I'm referring to any level of power. This could be a employer-employee relationship. This could be a doctor-patient relationship, a child-parent relationship, or a government position, or a bureaucratic position, or anything. Any sort of power relationship. Is that that power will attract somebody corruptible. And some time ago, I went down this thought process, and I can't go back from it because I think it's correct. Is that if power is corrupting, there's a sense that, well, power is evil. Like to have power is to do evil, or to lust after power. Let's use a strong word. To want to go after power, to want to acquire it, is in itself evil. Well, if I was evil and I didn't want any competition, particularly from someone who wasn't evil, particularly from someone who was good, would it not be a fine story to spin to say, okay, wait a minute. Hey, all you good people. It's not just that you could do bad things with power. The power itself is corrupting, and the goodness that you have, you will lose it and become evil if you acquire this power. So in order to avoid becoming evil, you should avoid acquiring this power. And the good people say, oh, I don't want to become evil. And power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, so I need to stay away from that so I myself don't become evil. Well, if that's true, who's standing in the way of the evil people getting the power? Right? Even if you're neutral, if your butt is in the seat of power, again, in any dynamic, like this doesn't necessarily have to be political power, but let's just use that for example. If you're a neutral person and your butt is filling the seat of a political position, that position is not available for filling by the butt of an evil person, right? Like, just your presence alone blocks that off. And I really think this is worth hammering down, because it's such a tempting. I mean, I'm really flipping this on its head. It's such a tempting thing to believe. Like, oh, all power is corrupting, therefore all power is bad, therefore I should avoid it in any way that I can. Or else I myself will become evil. It's tempting because it makes responsibility clear. Becoming a theme of this show, right? Talking about responsibility. It makes a responsibility clear. Because if I want to do good things, and I'm responsible for doing good things, and that entire section of options of things that I could choose to do, which is gaining power, if that becomes off limits to me, the choices that I have left to make become simpler. And for two reasons. One is because you simply have less choices to choose from, so that makes things simpler. But secondly, and more importantly, you don't have to have the uncomfortable situation of having to make a decision that could be wrong, and that wrong decision could really, really hurt people, or really, really affect people negatively, right? I mean, let's continue on political power, for example, right? Okay, you have political power, you're in a legislative capacity, or you're in an executive capacity, or you're in a bureaucracy, whatever, and something comes across your desk and you realize you have a choice to make, and your choice is going to affect whether a policy goes this way or a policy goes that way. And I mean, a lot of policies might be cut and dry, like, should we go to war and kill all those people in that other country or not? I think that one's pretty cut and dry. But I mean, okay, here's a tax policy that'll slightly modify this, or here's a regulation policy that'll slightly modify that, or a subsidy policy that'll do this or slightly modify, you know, all this little nuancy stuff where you go, I think I'm right about this, but what if I'm not? Then I'm the person responsible for screwing this up for all these people. And again, I mean, this expands beyond the political. I mean, imagine you own a business and you're responsible for employees, right? Or you're responsible for customers, and you say, hey, if I don't provide the service correctly, am I cheating customers out of the money for, you know, they paid me good money for a service? If I don't, you know, treat my employees well, if I don't pay them more, I'm not treating them well. But if I pay them too much, the business is going to go out of business. So what do I mean, that's power, that's responsibility that comes from the power of that position, and it's scary because now the weight of the decision is on your shoulders, and if you make the wrong one, even if you have good intentions and you think you have good information and you think you have it well reasoned, you can still make the wrong answer, or you can still make the wrong decision, and then you're responsible for making that wrong decision. So if there's a easy way out, people will take it. If there's an easy way out, people will take it. This is the thing. And I'm positing that if you are good, or you have a desire for good, and very, very loosely using these terms, right? I mean, in the future, we could talk about what is and what isn't good. But if you're listening to this, you probably have a semi-decent idea. If you want to do good, you have to get the power. If you want to do good, you have to get the power. Because if there's a good thing that you want to do, but you don't have the power to do it, well, then you can't do it. If there's a good thing you want to do and you don't have the power to do it, you can't do it. And I know there's like the anarchist or libertarian argument, particularly for the political power, that, well, you cannot affect change in that manner because you're initiating the use of force, and the initiation of the use of force by itself is evil, right? So there's nothing that you can do in that sphere that isn't evil. And I used to believe that, but now I completely disagree, because there's two principles if we start with like an ethical consideration, right? I mean, after we get out of metaphysics, is we have to have a non-aggression principle, which is it's not okay to initiate aggression against somebody else. And you also have a self-defense principle, which is to say, well, if somebody initiates force against me, then I have the right to defend myself. Well, does that only one apply to political power but not the other? How does only one apply to political power, not the other? So the non-aggression principle applies. So therefore, I shouldn't touch anything. Therefore, let all the openly evil people get in and take all the political power. But the self-defense principle doesn't apply because, again, simply having your butt in the seat to prevent an evil person from having their butt in that seat, how is that not a form of self-defense, right? How is that not a freaking form of self-defense? And we talk about economics a lot on the show, and my understanding of ethics and morality changed a lot once I understood economics a little bit better, and I realized that the entire free market, libertarian, anarcho-capitalist conceptualization, which honestly I believe leaks over into the political conservative, moderate conservative right, it is entirely bunk in such a way that should change the entirety of how they think, right? Because if the story is the barter theory of money, people trade and they make voluntary exchanges with each other, that at some point somebody comes along and says, I am the government, I coerce you or force you into giving me something called taxes, and then I can turn around and spend that, and I didn't actually do anything to earn it, I just threatened you. And that creates the distortion which evil comes from. And if we could just not have that distortion anymore, people could voluntarily trade and solve with each other, and that'd be great. Well, if that's a true story, then sure, but that's not the story. The story is that the state creates the money first. Money is a unit of state, and as a secondary effect, a market is then able to form because there's money left over from the arbitrary tax token that the state has spent into existence that they didn't tax back. So what's left over, the free market can use as a unit of trade, or a unit of, honestly, of measuring debts is really what it is. So the whole idea behind the like free market capitalism stuff, I mean, even if you look at the history, goes back to, hey, if we in England have created the Industrial Revolution and nobody else has yet, so if we force everybody to trade with us without tariffs, we can openly dominate all the other countries before they have had time to go through the Industrial Revolution themselves. So, free market for everybody, and if you disagree, we're coming in with cannons. And, well, I mean, if you look at the history of it, it's all these proponents of the free market. Anytime a government action didn't benefit them, they were like, oh my God, the free market, you can't do that, you can't do that. But anytime the government action did benefit them, they were like, get that government in there. For example, hey, they have a tariff, that other country, blow their ports open and force them to trade with us with the free market. So everything could be, now the government has been gotten out of the way because we brought in the government to blow the government. It's so asinine when you actually look at the history. So when bringing this forward, there's this prevailing concept of like, okay, if we could just get the government out of the way, the free market will come in and fix everything. So the fact that you even participate in government is in itself mucking up the entire society, and you're just participating in evil. Because if we just got the government out of the way, everything would be fine. And this isn't. I know, like the ANCAP libertarian thing is kind of a fringe thing, but this conceptualization, this attitude, leaks over to the conservative, moderate side. It totally leaks over to the conservative moderate side, where it's like, instead of saying, okay, we'll get rid of all of it or get rid of 99% of it, they say, okay, well, there's a good mix, and maybe it's like 80-20, 80% free market and 20% government, because we do need taxes for some stuff, and therefore we will suffer that the government takes some stuff away from the free market that created it, and then gives us roads and justice and all that sort of stuff. It's just an entirely bunk conversation, but the attitude still leaks over to the, in quotes, moderate right, that's to get involved with government itself. And I've switched over to government. Still think power, right? If I get involved with power itself, that in itself is going to make my soul dirty and posit evil on myself. What it actually is a form of cowardice, because people are afraid of having the responsibility to make decisions where they could make the wrong decision and be responsible for making that wrong decision. And I don't even mean being liable, right? Because it's like, okay, you get in that position and you do something bad and it screws up. It's not like, you get charged and go to jail, right? But if people have a conscience, they still have a conscience over making those decisions, and they don't want to be in a situation where they have to make those decisions. And the reason is cowardice. The reason is cowardice. And as I have explored religious stuff over my life, and I mean, I've really come to the understanding that I live and breathe in a Christian society, no matter how much it wants to be secular, right? I mean, go back to the non-aggression principle and the self-defense principle in the first place. Tell me with a straight face that those ideas didn't come from a Christian society. You think in ancient Rome they had the non-aggression principle? Well, maybe you shouldn't go out and conquer and kill all the men and rape all the women and enslave all the children of the neighboring kingdom. Well, why not? Why wouldn't we do that? The Colosseum needs slaves to kill and torture for the spectators. Where else is that going to come from? I mean, I fully recognize that I'm in the Christian civilization, and that the idea that people are intrinsically valuable and we gauge our moral aspirations around that is a totally Christian idea. But even with that, I find this lacking. Someone correct me if I'm wrong here. That I think there is a moral imperative that if you have the potential to achieve something, we'll call it, again, we're using vague terms, we'll call it great. You have the potential to achieve something great, and you squander that potential, I find that morally reprehensible. I think that's morally reprehensible, and I don't think that there's a religious attitude, even from the Christian world, East or West, that really addresses that. The idea of, okay, well, you have the ability, whether you have the intellectual ability or the physical ability or the connection, or whatever, the speech ability. You have the ability to learn how to do this and go out and be great and gain a lot of power, and with that power, you can influence things in a very good way. And you will make mistakes. You will do stuff that will hurt people along the way. It's going to happen. You got to crack a few eggs to make an omelet, right? It's going to happen, but you have to do it anyway. Because if you don't, you are squandering the potential that you were given. And my opinion of what people do, and again, this is why I'm really talking about responsibility, is everything is gauged on what you believe that you're responsible for. People base their actions on what they believe that they are responsible for. And what you believe is the stuff that you say to yourself or what someone else says in your ear long enough, right? However you can control the speech around yourself and around others is what you're going to feel that you're responsible for. So whatever I can do, if I fear something and I know I should do it, if I can utilize speech to somehow make myself not responsible for that thing, I can't act toward it anymore because I'm not responsible for it. I went over this in another video. Your responsibility is, in essence, your free will. It's your ability to make a choice, your ability to respond. So if you could remove something out of the spectrum of your free will, you're not responsible for it anymore. Because if you don't have the free will choice to affect it, then obviously you're not responsible for it. There's nothing you can do about it. So if you have the ability to increase your power, this could be financial, it could be political, it could media, like I'm talking in front of a camera and I'm reaching more people, whatever, right? If you have the ability to increase that power and you don't, as someone who wants to do good in the world, right? I mean, let me be clear here. Like, I want to do evil, and Dylan is telling me if I don't increase my power in order to do more evil, that's evil. No, I'm not saying that at all, right? If you want to have a good, in the moral sense, impact on the world, on the universe that we have access to at the moment, at least, you need power to do it. And if you shirk away from it, you are falling right in the hands of people who are evil. Because of course they don't want you to have any power. Because then you would be competition for them. I need to look something up. There's can't even call it a book. It's 8 pages long. It's called The Anathema of Zos. I might just make a video reading this at one point. It was written by a guy who is credited for being the founder of chaos magic. This is like early 20th century. So we're already in occult wonkiness. And I stumbled upon this book, I believe when I was 18. A friend of mine had it in his library that I opened up and started reading. It's 8 pages, and maybe I've read it 100 times by now. I kept reading it over and over and over again because I couldn't. It's so bizarre. It's called The Anathema of Zos, a sermon to the hypocrites, and it's apparently an automatic writing. And if you don't know what an automatic writing is, this is supposedly when you take a pen and paper, you let your mind go blank, and you let your hand just start writing out whatever it writes out. This is supposedly the result of an automatic writing. And I'm just gonna recite the opening. I've got it right here, but I got it memorized because I've read the damn thing so many times, right? So this thing opens up, and you get no details on Zos. This is the Anathema of Zos. You get no details on Zos. You just open the book, and this is how it starts. Hostile to self-torment, the vain excuses called devotion, Zos satisfied the habit by speaking loudly unto himself. And at one time, returning to familiar consciousness, he was vexed to notice interested hearers. A rabble of involuntary mendicants, pariahs, whoremongers, adulterers, distended bellies, and the prevalent sick. Grotesques, which obtain in civilizations. His irritation was much, yet still they pestered him, saying, Master, we would learn of these things. Teach us religion. And seeing, with chagrin, the hopeful multitude of believers, he went down into the valley of Styx, prejudiced against them as followers. And when he was ennui, he opened his mouth in derision, saying, "Oh, ye whose future is in other hands, this familiarity is permitted not of thy, but of my impotence. Know me as Zos the goatherd, savior of myself and of those things I have not yet regretted. Unbidden ye'd listen to my soliloquy. Endure then my anathema." And then he goes into probably the most poetic shit-talking I've ever encountered in my life. But we get this guy, it opens up where there's just Zos character. We know nothing about it. He's talking to himself, hostile to self-torment. It's this I mean, open prod at religion, like religious activities are just a form of self-torment. So he's hostile to religious activities because they're a form of self-torment. But he's got the habit. In order to satisfy the habit, there's this recognition that there's this desire for some sort of religious or spiritual connection. So in order to satisfy that habit, he starts talking to himself. And as he's talking to himself, people start to approach. And now at this point, there's no indication, I mean, there never is any indication of whether Zos is like a human or above human, or he's clearly not God. But is he human or not? We don't know. But people come to him, they say, "Hey, Master, it sounds like you're talking about, something spiritual. Teach us religion." And then he gets irritated. And despite he knows that it's a bad idea, he can't help himself, he yells at them. "Foul feeders, slipped are ye on your own excrement? Parasites, having made the world lousy, imagine ye are of significance to heaven, desiring to learn, think ye to escape hurt in the rape of your ignorance?" Well, I think I skipped a part. No, I was right. "Desiring to learn, think ye to escape hurt in the rape of your ignorance? For of what I put in, far more than innocence shall come out. Laboring not the harvest of my weakness, shall I your moral-fed desires satisfy?" "Laboring not the harvest of my weakness, shall I your moral-fed desires satisfy." This is exactly what he's getting at. And this is exactly what attracted me to this 8-page diatribe when I was 18. Because I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out what he was getting at. But I finally figured it out. "Shall I your moral-fed desires satisfy?" "For of what I put in, far more than innocence shall come out." "And desiring to learn, think ye to escape hurt in the rape of your ignorance?" So, if I could pull the wool over my eyes and make myself not responsible for something, and I can claim I am doing good because I have not engaged in the bad thing, I have not engaged in the dangerous thing. Someone has told me what to do and told me how to be good. So if I do those things that the person tells me what to do, how to be good, then I've got it covered, and I don't have to engage in the challenge of facing myself and realizing I ultimately am responsible for what's going on here. "Think ye to escape hurt in the rape of your ignorance." So with that ignorance going out and just letting the destruction happen, because I go, la la la, I'm not responsible for anything, I'm doing good, I'm thinking that I'm going to escape hurt because I want someone to tell me else what to do. "Master, we would learn of these things, teach us religion. I'm skipping stuff. "In that ye are cannibals, what meat should I offer? Having eaten of your dead selves, savored with every filth, ye now raven the glutton of my mind's motion? Verily, far easier for madmen to enter heaven than moral lepers. Of what difference is life or death? Of what difference is dream or reality? Know ye nothing further than your own stench? Know ye what ye think ye know for certain? Fain would I be silent." And he goes on. I mean, there's just a ton of shit talking here. But it gets into things like this. Oh, ye favored of your own excuses. Guffaw between bites. Guffaw means to laugh very, very loud for those not up to date on their slightly older English. Heaven is indifferent to your salvation or catastrophe. Your curveless crookedness maketh ye fallow for a queer fatality. What? I, to aid your self-deception, ameliorate your decaying bodies, preserve your lamentable apotheosis of self? The sword thrust, not salve I bring. Am I your swineherd, though I shepherd unto goats? My pleasure does not obtain among vermin with vain ideas, with hopes and fears of absurd significance. Not yet am I overweary of myself. Not yet shall I palliate abomination, for in ye I behold your parents and the stigmata of foul feeding. In this ribald intoxication of hypocrisy, this monument of swindlers' littlenesses, where is the mystic symposium, the hierarchy of necromancers that was? Honest was Sodom! Your theology is a slime pit of gibberish become ethics. In your world, where ignorance and deceit constitute felicity, everything ends miserably, besmirched with fratricidal blood. Seekers of salvation? Salvation of your sick digestion, crippled beliefs, convalescent desires, your borrowed precepts and prayers, a stench unto all good nostrils. Unworthy of a soul! Your metamorphosis is laborious of morbid rebirth, to give habitants to the shabby sentiments, the ugly familiarities, the calligraphic pandemonium. A world of abundance, acquired of greed. Thus are ye outcasts. Ye habitate dung heaps. Your glorious palaces are hospitals set amid cemeteries. Ye breathe gay-heartedly within this cesspit? Honest with Sodom. Honest with Sodom. In this ribald intoxication of hypocrisy, this monument of swindlers' littlenesses, where's the mystic symposium, the hierarchy of necromancers that was? So there's this shit-talking, this name-calling, where he's saying, you can't even be big evil. You are unworthy of a soul. What does it mean to be unworthy of a soul? This haunted me. Unworthy of a soul! What does that mean? The soul is supposed to be the agent of free will, the thing that allows you to make a choice. And because the only thing that you, according to Zos, the choice that you're making, the one choice that you want to make is to give away the ability to make that choice. You are unworthy of having that ability. And because of this, where your ignorance and deceit constitute felicity and everything ends miserably, besmirched with fratricidal blood, you try to give away your responsibility to somebody else for someone else to tell you what to do. And use that as a shield for terrible decisions. You can't even steal big. Like, at one point, if I get there, one of his insults is pilferers. What's it mean to, you know the word pilfer? It means to steal little stuff. Like, you can't, like, you're gonna steal stuff and you can't even go big. It's disgusting. Heaven is indifferent to your salvation or catastrophe. O ye favored of your own excuses, guffaw between bites. Heaven is indifferent to your salvation or catastrophe. So we got these cups made, these Irida TV cups. Zazzle put their damn name on the bottom, which I don't think is really fair considering I paid for the cup. I don't need your fucking logo on it. If I got the cup for free, fine, but I paid for the cup. But on the back, I put a quote here, which is, in your desire to create a world, do unto others as you would when sufficiently courageous. That is a quote directly from this anathema of Zos. And obviously a spin off of the golden rule, which is do unto others as you would like done to yourself. Do unto others as you would when sufficiently courageous. In your desire to create a world, do unto others as you would when sufficiently courageous. Being sufficiently courageous is going somewhere that makes yourself uncomfortable and also comes with added responsibility on the other side. It comes with added responsibility on the other side. And because people fear this so much, they want to be told what to do. They need the sophistry, not just to manipulate others, but to manipulate themselves. I need the sophistry to manipulate myself so I don't have to be responsible for my own actions. Do unto others as you would when sufficiently courageous. As much as I would like to read this whole thing, it does take about 20 minutes to go through. I'm not going to sit here and go through it. And usually I can't make it all the way through without losing my voice. But after a ton of shit talking, this is free on the internet. You can find it, The Anathema of Zos. Intentionally blasphemous, so just get ready for that if you haven't figured that out already. So, at some point at the end, Zos gets tired and he falls asleep after all his shouting at the followers. With a yawn, Zos wearied and fell asleep. In time, the stench woke him, for he had slept amidst the troughs, and he observed that the crowd were no longer with him. Only swine remained. And he guffawed and spake thus, "Not yet have I lost relationship, and am thereby nearly asphyxiated. Caught up am I in the toils of sentiment, the moral hallucinations within the ebb and flows of fear, of hopes and fears. Shall age alone transmute desire? Not yet have I disentangled illusion from reality, for I know not men from swine, dreams from reality, or whether I did speak only unto myself. Neither know I to whom my anathema would be the more impressionable." But then he looks around, and he says, "My insensible soliloquy is eaten as revelation." My insensible soliloquy, this is what he's saying about what he just said, is eaten as revelation. What I spake with hard-strived conceit to increase enterprise brings forth only swinish snorts. Water is not alone in finding its level. What I spake with hard-strived conceit to increase enterprise brings forth only swinish snorts. The shit-talking was to get you to move your ass. The shit-talking, the name-calling, is to get you to go out and accomplish something. Do something courageous. Create a world that would be there if you went out and you did something courageous. Be worthy of a soul. And most of it falls. It's not on deaf ears. It's worse than that. What I spake with hard-strived conceit... No, excuse me. My insensible soliloquy is eaten as revelation. People try to listen. So are you telling me to do this? Or are you telling me to do that? Are you telling me to do this? Or are you telling me to do that? I'm telling you to stop asking me what to do. You need to be responsible. You need to go forth and do something hard. Because that's how you actually do good in the world. How does he say it? He has a great way of saying it in here. Go labor. Fulfill the disgust of becoming yourselves, of discovering your beliefs, and thus acquire virtue. Let your good be accidental, thus escape gratitude and its sorry vainglory. For the wrath of heaven is heavy on easy self-indulgence. I want that in your mind as you're going out here. The wrath of heaven is heavy on easy self-indulgence. There's always a reason not to do something. There's always a reason not to do something. There's something on TV. I'm too sick. I just don't have the constitution for that. It just doesn't interest me. I just don't have the motivation right now. Not feeling inspired. There's always... I gotta work that day. It's my kid's birthday. it's an anniversary. It's whatever. There's always a reason not to do something. What separates people that spend their potential well are the people who find a reason to do something.